record. There we go. All right. So welcome everyone to our, I believe this is our 5th or 6th. Goodness, I always need to keep track of when I start these episodes. But welcome to our 5th or 6th episode of �々Conversations. This is a very special episode this evening because we have cuquisrobledo with us. And usually our episodes or our �々Conversations that we have are with members or with healthcare or physicians, kind of researchers in the kind of scientific industry, to help talk about health and everything surrounding not just achondroplasia, but dwarfism in general. But we're very excited to have someone who's a member of the dwarfism community and who has dwarfism herself, cuquisrobledo, with us. And before we get into it, I know Cuquis and I will introduce ourselves. I'm Chandler. I host �々Conversations for Growing Stronger. And for our viewers who may not, who may just be listening in, I'm wearing a long sleeve mauve shirt this evening. I have long brown hair and I have a Growing Stronger branded back screen behind me. And so Cuquis, you're welcome to go introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, I'm cuquisrobledo. I have dark brown curly hair, dark rimmed glasses. I'm kind of wearing a blue and white dress, and I'm in this dark office with the kind of wood paneling at the back, a gray couch, and behind me is the Puerto Rican flag, but I'm actually Cuban. I'm not Puerto Rican, but that is my stepfather and his family are Puerto Rican. And yeah, I have a form of dwarfism called 𝘾𝙊𝙉𝙑𝙀𝙁. And for me, what that basically means is how it's different from those who have achondroplasia is that I always tell people that if you take someone who is, how do you call it? Someone who is average height and you shrink them down a little bit, so they'll a little bit more proportionate. But my face is a little bit smaller. My hands are a little bit smaller. My torso is typically a little bit smaller. And so I'm about 3 feet, 4.5 inches tall. But yeah, I haven't let that stop me from doing what I do in life. Yeah. So thank you for introducing me, Chandler. I just recently graduated from a counseling program here in Houston, but prior to that, and I still do this, I did a lot of disability advocacy work. I do a lot of creative work too with digital media, storytelling. I did a lot of work with documentaries back in the day. But I'm just really excited to be here and talk with Chandler and just have this great conversation.
Well, that was a great introduction. Can you, knowing I've done so much reading up on you on both of your sites and everything, I guess I would first like to ask, you kind of gave us a little bit about your background. What kind of sparked your interest into getting into really the like multimedia world?
Yeah. Oh boy. So I guess growing up, I've always been a creative person, but I never knew that I could use multimedia as a career or even as a form of advocacy. And so I think all of that started when I was in college, when I was at Duke University. I did this. It was kind of like a study abroad program, but it was a service learning program at the same time while I was at Duke. It was between my sophomore and junior year. And I had the opportunity to work with this nonprofit organization called Disability Rights Washington up in Seattle. And I work specifically on their with their communications team called Rooted in Rights. And through there, I was just an intern, in college, and I got to see kind of firsthand how they use video as a form of advocacy for the disability community. And I remembered I watched, one of my supervisors kind of do the social media aspect of it, and then one of them who would go out and do the shooting, and then I would look at all these tapes and how they advocated for people who needed to use service animals, people with different needs and different issues in the disability community. And I thought to myself, oh, that's so cool. I didn't know I could do that. And I was a psychology major at the time, and I just had no idea that this was a way to use the creative realm in this type of field. And so then a year later, I actually went back for a summer and I did more work with them, and I became their storytellers coordinator for this project we started called the Rooted in Rights Storytellers series. And there I recruited, I don't even remember how I did this. I think it was just cold calling, emailing people from around the country, around the world who had disabilities, said, hey, we're doing this project where we're teaching people with disabilities how to, advocate for themselves or advocate for issues that are important to them using video. Would you be interested? And I remembered we got a good group of people and from around the country and around the world, and we would send video equipment that was accessible to them to help them create their own videos. And that included, creating scripts from, the very beginning. We would go back and forth on edits and how to make it very, succinct and clear with a clear message, and ask from the audience of what they want people to do about this issue and why it was important. And then we would teach them how to use the equipment from, just video chatting, and then they'd fill themselves, and then they'd send the footage back, and then we in-house would edit it. I would do a lot of editing on that end. And it was just really cool to see that. And then I did a few other campaigns too myself. I did one that was called the #Crappycode campaign, where we went around the city of Seattle and we filmed just how bad the curb cuts were in Seattle. And
Mhm.
it was related to a lawsuit that was actually going on between the plaintiffs and the city of Seattle, where a lot of the curb cuts in downtown Seattle were either broken or were not in compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so we just kind of showcased what a good curb cut is. And we had people submit their #crappy curbs to us. And then that, along with the lawsuit, kind of sparked, you know, big interest, not just in Seattle, but around the country. So other people were starting to do this in their state as well. And sure enough, now the city of Seattle actually has to comply with the ADA. And now they have the opportunity to, I think it was, they have to install 18,000 curb cuts over the course of 18 years. And that, I think, was in combination with the lawsuit that was going on, and then the help of this kind of social media video advocacy pull, because they got other people really thinking about what a good curb cut should be. And
Right.
they were able to talk to the legislatures. And I think it put a little bit of heat on the city. So that was, I think, that was one of my favorite videos that I did with Rooted in Rights. And then, yeah, and then after that, we did a lot of work with mental health too, and intersections of disability too, and how, people who have a disability and who are part of the LGBTQ community, how, they might not necessarily get the same benefits for, if for disability if they are married. And so that issue as well came up too in some of our videos, intersections with, the African American community and disability culture as well. And so it was a really, really cool way to see how video could have such an impact on our community too. So that was, I think, my biggest start to kind of
Where you are
multimedia.
today, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of where I am today. And then I ended up actually going to graduate school right after that. That was in 2018, and I wanted to kind of hone in on my own videography skills.
Mhm.
And so then I started looking into just kind of documentary work
Yeah.
outside of, outside of disability issues, but also just as a way to kind of hone in my craft. And one of my uh proudest projects that I worked on was talking about the aftermath of Hurricane Maria on the island of Puerto Rico and getting the perspectives of the people of the island,
Mhm.
because in the United States it was being very highly uh uh you know there was a lot of politics going on with that, and not a lot of help was given to the community. And so I
Right.
wanted to hear the stories from the people by the people.
Right.
And I think that message that I learned from Root and Rights, which was, authentic storytelling, and, it's stories from the people by the people. That's something that I took with me to graduate school, that I continue to take with me, whether I'm talking to someone, interviewing someone, or even in counseling too. It's
Mhm.
their story. They have the autonomy to share what they want to share. And so that's something that I've, continued to use, just throughout my life and growing up as an advocate too.
Yeah, and you really you bring up a great point. When you're, I was thinking about this when you're kind of talking about like how you dove into, um, multimedia through advocacy and kind of storytelling. Um, I feel like everyone has some degree of a love-hate relationship with social media. I have that as well.
Mhm.
Personally, like, I have my days where I'm like, social media is the worst thing ever, but like professionally, I love it. And I'm like, I always like, I look
Mhm.
at social media more like from a professional end sometimes, just because personally it does get to you. However, um, I realized, social media really has made, such an impact. I've learned, and I never thought about this years ago until kind of in recent years, as I've really become more involved in patient advocacy groups and conferences, how just like how much how much social media really has made a significant impact.
Mhm.
Um, you and I were kind of talking before we hopped on about how, we're always like, anybody can ask us questions about our diagnosis, our form of dwarfism, and it just kind of gets, sometimes we just feel it's repetitive and it's like, oh, like, but I know like you and I both have, for years now, have shared our kind of experiences on social media. And I think the beauty of social media within advocacy is we get to control that, and we control what we want to share about our own journey.
Mhm.
I remember growing up, like before social media really was a thing. I remember, even though I was so young, I still remember when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and like we'd be at a store and someone would just want to be like wanting to just know, oh, like you have dwarfism and whatever. And it wasn't an ill-mannered thing, but it was one of those things where I'm like, I really don't want to talk about this today. Like,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like some days you want to advocate, you're happy to discuss your, yes, I have achondroplasia
Yeah.
or but then, there's those days where I'm like, look, I'm just here with my mom. We're doing our groceries. Like, I just
Right.
won't, I'm just like, obviously I have dwarfism. Great. Like we don't,
Yeah.
yeah. But now, and you see, now I'm able to be like, yes, and you can actually kind of follow me and learn more about my experience, through this.
Mhm.
And I think I feel like social media has been such an amazing tool, within advocacy, because we get to control and share our share about ourselves to the degree that we want.
Yeah.
And it also helps us, share with people, more about our, own diagnosis and everything. And so, you were talking about that, and I'm just, and, just in general, anyone, who, uses social media as a way to kind of advocate for themselves, it's just such a great tool that we have. Because I know when I did start kind of being more, when I was 16 and I really started using it more as an advocacy tool, I didn't really, it didn't click in my mind then that what I was doing was the start of, or was becoming a patient advocate, or just an advocate in general. Because I was just like, oh, I'm just a 16-year-old girl who's like sharing her life on the internet because I have this and I know people want to know about it. It never clicked in my mind until these past few years. That's actually patient advocacy, and that's actually being an advocate, and all of this. And I've had people, and I don't know if people have asked you before, but like I've had people like say to me like, oh, so you're like an influencer, and I'm like, no. Not really. Like I don't see, I really don't see, again, I'm very involved in like in overall general like patient advocacy, beyond just dwarfism, and I think others kind of feel that same way too. It's like, we're not influencers. Like I don't have, codes or this, and like I don't see myself as an influencer. I always say I'm an advocate. And I think, people just, when they see somebody on social media constantly kind of talking about their life, they think influencer. But I personally feel like there is a difference in influencing and advocacy. But I didn't mean to get kind of all into that, but when you were saying all of that, it made me, it just kind of, I thought that was important, to share. I know you have so many, more great things that we would love to know about you. For those, and I know you said it right in the beginning, but this is a conversations, and it's a play on the word achondroplasia. But for those who may not know, can you tell us a little bit more about your form of dwarfism, and what living with that has been like? I know obviously it hasn't prevented you from doing what you want to do. But I will say, I think a majority of our audience is more familiar with achondroplasia. So for those who aren't, familiar with your form of dwarfism, would you care to share with us more about it?
So I guess, how do I describe this? So it's interesting because I actually didn't officially get diagnosed with spondyloepimetaphyseal dysplasia. I always say SCMD for short. But I didn't actually get officially diagnosed until I was, I think, 10 years old, and it was with a geneticist in Belgium. He was the only one who was able to give me the diagnosis. And I think the main, living with living with SCMD, I think in general, I'm more on the smaller scale in terms of like spectrum on different types of dwarfism. Like even my friends who have SCD, it's very similar, like at conference, at the Little People of America conference, I do go to those meet and greets because we're kind of all lumped into the same category, but I am more on the smaller spectrum too. My hands, I think, my geneticist called my fingers kind of bullet fingers because in the x-rays, they're a little bit chunkier too. And I know in terms of just kind of the growth, it's like SCD, it's affected kind of here in this area too. But for me, it's affected in this area in my wrist too. So my hands are, I don't know if you can see, they're a lot smaller than my friends who have SCD too. So everything I always say is like very just shrunken down, like really, really small, but still proportionate wise. But yeah, I was really small growing up, and I, was used to get bullied in elementary school, and actually, yeah, I was bullied by kind of the younger kids in elementary school because of my size, because I was even smaller than a kindergartner. And but I remembered my mom, she taught me how to advocate for myself. And I remember this one day I was playing on the playground. I was 7 years old, and these girls who were younger than my friend and I, they came up and they, would call me names. They called me baby, and they said, "You can't be on the playground. You're just a baby." And I used to get like pushed and prodded at on the playground. I would just be minding my own business. And I remember this one time, my mom taught me how to advocate and stand up for myself. So I remember I stood up. I was just like, "Listen, I deserve to be on this playground and be on this equipment just like everyone else. So you better just leave me alone." And they did not think I could have a voice like that. And they actually, backed away. They were like, "Oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't have said something like that." And normally, like, if people asked, or if they asked me, "Oh, why are you so small?" Usually I'll just say, "Oh, it's, just because my bones grow at a slower rate than most." And usually you know, that's good enough for the kids, and then just, move on. I do remember though, and I don't know if it's specifically with my type of dwarfism, because for me, my ligaments ended up growing up very lax too. I mean, they still are. So I know a lot of my friends with SCD, they tend to have very tight joints and ligaments, but everything in my body is really lax. And I was prone to having scoliosis. And so I started developing scoliosis when I was 8 years old. And that's just basically my spine, had a curvature. And by the time I was 11, I had a 100-degree curve in my back. But the thing was that because I was so flexible, everything was kind of trying to compensate for itself. So you couldn't exactly tell, but it was compressing on my stomach. And so I had to have spine surgery. And at the time, this was in 2007. Again, I think a lot of my advocacy work and becoming an advocate really came from my mom, because at that time, she wanted to find the best for me. And the best for me, unfortunately, at the time, was not in the US. The only option for spine surgery was these vector rods that were to be placed on my rib cage. And there was like a 75% chance rate that they would break. And my mom didn't want that, and she wanted me to continue growing. She didn't want me to be fused just yet. She wanted to see how much more height I could gain. And so we ended up going to Paris, France for my spine surgery, for all the places, because there was this engineer there, this biomedical engineer, who just happened to develop this special growing rod that it wasn't in the US yet. I think now, years later, I think now those versions of it in the US or things similar to it, but at the time, that's where we had to go. And I ended up almost getting paralyzed in the surgery because they overstretched my spinal cord, and I had to relearn how to walk after that. So it was a complicated procedure, but it did ultimately save my life. Relearning how to walk was a bit of a struggle too, but my mom showed me how to use Latin dance to like get up and move and motivate me to get up and move, because they didn't provide physical therapy at all. And so, and so ever since then, I don't take walking or moving or dancing for granted. And then my legs, on the other side, with my type of dwarfism, my legs were also very short, and my right leg happened to be pretty bowed, and I kept falling a lot. And so when I was 16, I opted to have, I think it was Channel, I think it was the same type of limb lengthening surgery you had with the it was the growing rods on the outside, and then you would
Mhm.
turn them with an Allen wrench. Yeah, and so I had one set done just on both parts of my legs, my thighs and my lower legs, and I did that for about 4.5 months, and I gained a total of 4.5 inches, and that ultimately did help me learn or help me get the height so I could be able to drive with pedal extensions
Yeah.
too. And so that was, for me, was also a very important milestone in my life, because not only did it help me get the length I needed to be able to drive, but my endurance got a lot better as a result. I was able to reach things more so I could go off and be independent in college. And it was, it's for me, I knew, like, by doing the surgery, that, like, I knew realistically I was not gonna get like so much height. Whoop, I was about to fall. I was not about to get so much height
Right.
compared to like how you got the full three
Mhm.
three surgeries. But I knew that even just this one, this one limb lengthening surgery would help me a lot too. Like, realistically, I knew I was going to be small for the rest of my life. For me, being small like this became a part of my identity, but this limb lengthening surgery really helped me with that independence. And
Right.
so with that, it was worth it.
And you made a really good point. You said you only got 4 inches, but it gave you what you needed. And I think that's something really important to note. Just with limb lengthening treatment in general, even for those who don't have dwarfism, limb lengthening um is a treatment for other skeletal dysplasias, other orthopedic conditions. But it's important to note that not the amount of length someone gets with their limb lengthening treatment is what is best for them, or it's what when it comes down to it, it's between the physician and the patient are the ones that kind of make that final decision. And I have shared obviously my journey, and I got the results I got after my growth plates were closed, so that wasn't an issue. But people need to also be aware. I knew my limits, and I knew what I wanted my outcome to be, and I got that outcome. But there are others, such as yourself or others with other forms of dwarfism who go with it. We're not all going to, we're all going for the same treatment, but we're not all going for the same results, really. Like, we have our different
Exactly.
reasons for it. And so for you, just getting those 4 inches, and when someone hears 4 inches, they are like, all of that for 4 inches? Like, I have my phone in front of me, and I know I think it's maybe like 5, maybe a little over 5 inches long. And so you look at this and you don't think that's much of anything.
Right.
But for you to, actually lengthen your legs like this much, it really does have a huge significance, when you go through that treatment. And I don't think people realize, when you get just an additional, even just 2 inches in your leg length, it really does make all the difference. I learned that through patients who have conditions, like one called fibular hemimelia, where it just affects one, they don't have dwarfism, it just affects the growth in one leg.
Right.
And even just the small amount of length gain makes a huge
Oh, so
impact.
much.
And
Yeah, so
so
much.
with dwarfism, we all do it bilaterally mostly.
Yeah.
And so your type of dwarfism, I obviously I take is much more rare than achondroplasia. And,
Mhm.
it's very much different with joints and ligaments and everything. And so, for your 4 inches are my 6 inches, and
Yes.
so I think it's important that people know, with limb lengthening, it's not all about that like extra height. It really, um, uh, something that I kind of use. I personally, I take what's called Pure Bar, and something that they kind of say when you're in the class, it's about length over height.
Mhm.
Like when you're doing certain like leg raise exercises, like you want your
Mhm.
leg fully extended, and if that means you can't like kick it up so high, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's about length over height. And I think about that when it comes to limb lengthening, because it kind of is. It's more about
Oh,
length over height. And so I'm really glad you kind of said that, because I feel like that may help other people understand it a little bit, better. Like now you're able to use um, pedal extenders, and I had your bio up in front of me that you gained 4.5 inches. Sorry, let me correct myself.
oh no, yeah, it's
You
okay.
gained,
The
you gained
extra
4.5 inches.
the extra half inch, it was that the right leg that was bowed initially apparently was actually longer than the left. So I had to make up that extra half inch. So and that was a whew, at the end. It was like,
You can't forget that.
can't forget that. Yes.
But I love that you say, you stand at 3 feet 4.5 inches tall, and you're proud of it. And for you, if you hadn't gotten those I guess 4.5 inches, I think you would still be proud of yourself. But really, those 4.5 inches obviously gave you what you were seeking. And that's also important to note for those who go through limb lengthening. It's all about the patient, what the patient wants. And I want to go back. You said after your spine surgery, you said you got into, was it salsa dancing
Yeah. So actually, so the Latin dancing. So it's
or
something
Latin
that,
dancing?
yeah. So it's
Sorry.
something that we did normally as a family since I'm quite Cuban, quite
So were you,
Mexican.
can I ask, was dance, were you doing dance prior to, any of your treatments, or did that kind of become a, oh my gosh, hobby? I could not think of the word
Yeah,
after the
yeah.
fact.
Yeah, so it's something that I did prior still to all
Mhm.
my treatments and surgery. My mom, I think, taught me when I was, and it was never anything competitive. Did
Same,
I
yeah.
did yeah, I did competitive like from when I was 17, a little bit in college, but really what I was doing was for fun, was just, my mom taught me like merengue and salsa and cha-cha when I was 2. I remembered listening to like
Uh-huh.
Gloria Stefan, and I would, get so excited and just would dance and move. And so yeah, so that's kind of always been integrated into my life.
I love that. Dance, same for me. I feel like you and I have very similar lifestyles. Dance was something, it was a major part of my life prior to my own treatment, and I got into it pretty quickly, right after my uh first lengthening. I
Mhm.
did not go back after my second lengthening, and a lot of people are like, why? I'm like, because after my second leg lengthening, uh, I was already in college, and I knew growing up I loved to dance, but I knew it wasn't my life.
Mhm.
And so, and I don't think people realize dancers, unless dance is their life, they kind of, that like their senior year of high school is really kind of like that last moment, because
Yeah.
if you're not going to continue it, it's hard to keep up with, when you go in to it for college and everything, unless it's going to be like
Mhm.
literally your career. Um,
Right.
but I do take, I still try to, dance when I can. And I did get into bar and yoga classes, which I know you uh if you want to talk about, how you're an instructor, I don't know if we want to talk about that.
Oh,
But
yes.
again, just because, this is a great conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I've always, what was it? I actually did a lot of Zumba prior to all my surgeries too. I remember I got into it when I was 7, all the DVDs and such. And then when the pandemic hit, and there was the opportunity to do everything online too, I was like, hey, why not? I might as well get certified to be a Zumba instructor. But I think, what was it? And I guess dance, whether it be Zumba or like my Latin dance, I think it all kind of has meaning in my life too. Like the Latin dance did rehabilitate me after my almost being paralyzed from my spine surgery. And then like I do like Zumba, like I've been working on my first class. I promise I will do a first class at some point. I will do it. I think it's just the initial nerves of getting that over with. But I know when I do Zumba, when I do dance, I feel more alive, and I feel more like it's helped me a lot with my own mental health too, and just with my own struggles too. And that's something that I've also just been, finishing up my counseling program. I was very interested in researching that for my potential clients too. And so that's something that, whether it be Latin dance or elements of Zumba, I don't know, that's something that I want to incorporate in my counseling work. So
great. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
How can I ask, how far are you in your graduate program right now?
Oh, I just finished at the end of last month.
Oh, well, congratulations. So
thank you.
like what's the next step besides Zumba, getting your first class right now, but in general from, graduation now, what's like the next steps?
Yeah, so next steps are, so I'm currently waiting for my license to come. I have a feeling hopefully by either end of next week or beginning of August, I will have my license. So here in the state of Texas, we get an LPC associate's license first, and then we have to do 3,000 hours of supervised training and supervision before we officially become like full licensed LPC. So it's kind of like, this is, if like in the medical field, this is like our internship / residency that we're about to kind of go in now. And yeah, I already have my supervisor lined up, and I have a job lined up, so I'll be working at a private practice. And yeah, I think just hopefully, getting those hours done, potentially doing more work with my clients on like movement work and how to still use dance to help with their mental health. One of the reasons I did start my graduate program was I wanted to help people in the dwarfism community with mental health, because that's something that I feel like, at least for me, when I've gone to like conferences, like the Little People of America conferences, or just in general, it's not really talked a lot about mental health. And I have yet to see a little person who is a counselor too for those in our population. And so that's one of my specialties that I want to, my specialty population I want to work with, because I feel it does help to some degree if someone has, recognizing that we all have different experiences, but recognizing that, there is some sort of, connection there, whether we have a similar, different type of dwarfism. We've all had some sort of surgeries done before.
I do agree. We're all very different, but we all do share very similar lived experiences.
Exactly.
And that's really, I think that's so wonderful that so I take you were kind of going into it, but my next question was going
Yeah.
to kind of be, what kind of main area of focus, are you, looking into, and I guess kind of dwarfism, mental health, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So
Um,
I guess dwarfism with mental health. I want to continue doing the work that I've been doing with my clients on anxiety,
yeah,
obsessive compulsive issues like life transitions, codependency, and then also I want to do a lot of work with trauma, but specifically medical trauma, which I
right.
know it's
That's
not,
huge.
it's huge. It's not talked a lot about
No,
in
absolutely.
the counseling field, but I want to address it because of my own medical trauma that I've had. And then knowing that, the work that I did with my own personal counseling and hoping that I can be a facilitator to either prevent medical trauma or in the event that medical trauma has happened, whether it be
Right.
someone from the dwarfism community or even outside of the dwarfism community, just how, you know, I can help them get back to baseline too.
Right.
And I think it's just so important to address that.
Absolutely. And I know, I remember when because I really did resonate with this when I was reading your bio for the
Mhm.
upteenth time. And I want to ask, especially since we're um almost, I guess, at the start of a new school year for most people, but I feel like this is kind of like maybe a lot of questions in one, and I'll just kind of like get them out. But one thing you had said that I really resonate is growing up, you had trouble, or you were faced with people not taking you seriously because you were much smaller and you were a little
Mhm.
person. I struggle with that. I feel like I still struggle with that.
Mhm.
And I think everyone, with dwarfism struggles with that with some degree. And not to, get into the whole like feministism, but I also
Yeah.
feel like us as women constantly struggle with that just in general. I feel like women are never taken seriously.
Mhm.
And then on top of kind of being a smaller woman, that really just kind of does add to it. I guess, what would you say, not to just women, but to anyone who, kind of feels like they struggle with being taken seriously, kind of like how to um, overcome that. And I guess I want to maybe ask that more for those who are going into college, because I feel like that's kind of
Yeah.
where, even though they may have already experienced this prior to, or maybe they've been in college and now they're going to graduate school, or they're about to kind of
Yeah.
start a new era in their life. But my take on it was, kind of when you go to college, you no longer kind of have your parents are always going to be your big support system, but now you're
Mhm.
out on your own. And kind of how do you, or how did you, or what advice would you give to someone who feels like they struggle being taken seriously because of their um short stature?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting going into college. I think one of the things that I realized I needed to do was to be my true authentic self.
Mhm.
And I think initially, actually, first when I started college, I did not want to tell like the friends that I was currently making that I had gone through all my surgeries because I wanted
Right.
them to like me for me, not out of pity too. But then as I got to know them, I realized that those are still a huge part of my story and my experience. And I think it's important that my good friends just kind of know, who I am too. And so I think and I think one thing that I just realized in college is it's so important to be true to yourself and, try different things within the college community that allow you to have a voice for yourself too. And so like I was a psychology major, but I think maybe I had one friend within my psychology degree that I really clicked with. All my other friends were kind of mixed around different campuses and different clubs, and branching out and trying something new and something even just a little bit outside of your comfort zone, just a little bit.
Mhm.
So, oh, what was it? One of the deans at my university, when we were at convocation, gave a really good analogy about how we were all oysters going into college, and how it's important to go outside your comfort zone just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, because that little pressure and of going outside your comfort zone will develop that tiny little sand into a little pool, and that will help you discover how unique you are in a sea of people, and how you can try to be your most authentic self too. And so I think stepping outside your comfort zone, if say where you are is not working, to explore places that you feel you can be your most true self wherever you are is so important too. And I'll even give this too, when I was transitioning from college to my first graduate program, which was the media program that I
Mhm.
did. I had maybe one really good friend, or a couple good friends in that program too. But at the end of the program, I felt a little, you know, lost too, and feeling a little bit isolated too. And I felt like by the end, I didn't feel like I was my true authentic self. And then when I transitioned, I loved the work I did in that program, and that program was fantastic. And I loved everything that I did in that program, and the people I met were fantastic. But I think I felt a little lost by the end with myself
Mhm.
and isolated. And then when I did a little bit of work and then I went to my second grad program, I then really felt I could be my true authentic self. Like I felt I found my people. And it may take a few years. It may take, you have a few close friends from this circle of
Yeah.
college friends. It may be, you know, not saying spend a lot of money and do another graduate program, but just saying that those different groups that you can try out, and you
I
will
have
find
learned,
your niche.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have learned as I've gotten older and, delved into adulthood. It really, I feel like when you're in school or growing up, you think you're going to have like this one group of friends for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's not it at all. It is so great to have your like different groups.
Yeah.
It really is. And I feel like, um, I feel like, I am always the same Chandler, but I'm clearly different in like one, there's clearly
Yeah.
like, there's this type of Chandler and that, like of my Chandler in this group. And then there's like, I have another Chandler in this group, but like, they're both still the same Chandler,
Yes.
but
Yes.
you are a little bit different in each of your, friend groups. And I think that's so like, I think it's, important that we know, you don't have to have like one set friend group for the rest of your life. You can have different ones, and everything. And, you can sometimes, you can bring those groups together. It's so great to not just have like one group. Um,
Exactly.
and I know,
Yeah.
and I know exactly how you feel. And sometimes, you feel, sometimes maybe you feel like you're more of that Cuquis today than you were yesterday. I don't, I think, but when
Yeah.
it comes down to it, you're still the same Cuquis.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's
Right.
kind of what you're describing is what we call in in counseling terms too, we call that you have different parts to yourself too.
Right.
And maybe one part might be more prominent today than, you know, than the other, or you may feel like you're in tune with this part of yourself today with this friend group, and that is okay. Like you can be multifaceted in that way, and I think it
Yeah.
makes you the most unique person you can be.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think, that is just so great. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we've been talking. I know it's only been like almost an hour, but I feel like we've been talking for so much longer. This is really, it's one, I feel like on behalf of Growing Stronger, we're honored that you are our first conversation that we've had with someone who actually does have dwarfism.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for kind of being that, or for being that for us. I know we'll definitely want you back more than once if you would love to, we'd love to have you back more than once if you're
Yeah,
willing.
absolutely. Yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. This was great.
Yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
it would be definitely, we would love, maybe later in the year, I think it would be great for us to talk maybe more about mental health and,
Yeah.
you know, maybe sometime if you ever want to teach us live, like teach us a Zoom class, we could do that. That might be fun.
Okay. Hey, I mean
Um,
that might help me break the ice. Just
that
kind
might be
of just do
fun,
it.
but I
Yeah.
definitely would love, I feel like so many could benefit from talking more about mental health. And it's so great that, you've you mentioned earlier, you kind of found, I would say there's clearly a lack of those with dwarfism who are mental health professionals, or who really kind of just mainly focus on mental health for little people.
Mhm.
You're right, there's not many of those, and so it would be great, maybe to, if you wanted to come back and talk about how someone who's in high school and thinking about someone with dwarfism who's in high school thinking about going into mental health and maybe wants to focus on mental health for dwarfism, we would love, I feel like, to talk with you more about that. I know I feel like there's so much more to Cuquis that, we didn't get to talk about. So before, we kind of like end this conversation, is there anything you would want to share more about yourself or just in general that, maybe we didn't talk about much today that you wanted us to talk about?
Yeah, yeah. I do also want to mention too that I am for those who are aware that are familiar with Little People of America, I am one of the co-chairs of the Dwarf Artist Coalition, that is kind of like a subcommittee
Yeah.
of Little People of America. And myself and some of my friends were all co-chairs, and it's this beautiful group where we help promote the works of dwarf artists around the country and around the world. You don't even necessarily have to be involved in Little People of America to be a part of the Dwarf Artist
Mhm.
Coalition. And I've done this for the last I've been a part of it, I think, the last two and a half years now, and it's just been incredible to kind of work with all these artists who and all these different talents and see all of their work and just help them be promoted within our community too, and even outside the community as well. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to this
Yeah.
organization, because because even if you all are artists or interested in art, this is something that
Can I ask,
you,
I assume, but I
yeah,
want to ask,
yeah.
is it like all like visions, media of art?
It's
Like, is it painting, photography,
Yeah, it's all types of
dance?
art. Yeah, it initially started as just visual arts, but we're all encompassing now. So whether you're a visual artist or even an aspiring artist too, that we
Mhm.
can try to help you too. Whether it's visual art, whether it's you know dance, theater, or we've had people who've done cross stitching too, poetry, spoken word, videography. We do it all. We promote all work.
And is it for uh I don't want to say, is there like an age limit, but is it more like high school, college, adults, or like is there like a middle school, like, is there, are there different like levels, or is it kind of like an all anyone type thing?
Yeah, so I think in terms of like if you're an artist that is like serious like on promoting their work, we'll try to
Right.
help you do that. And we do have programming to like we work with LPA to do programming like at convention, at
Mhm.
conference. We're trying to do more virtual programming as well. And we have done like programming for like youth, that's youth
Yeah.
oriented as well. So yeah, we're looking to expand for all
Well,
ages.
great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I want to I want to say this to make a mental note for myself and on the recordings. Anyone, watching, and I'll make sure when we post this to our YouTube and our socials, we will be sure to obviously have all of Cuquis' information, as well as uh, any information on for those interested in the Dwarf Artist Coalition,
Yeah.
how maybe they can get involved, contact you,
Yeah,
or whatever.
absolutely. Yeah.
I grew up, I'm not the artist. My brother and my sister definitely got more of the like actual like art creativity. My mom says I have a like creative mind, but like my brother and sister can take a pencil and a paper and make something. I can't. I can't. But still I did grow up in a very like art family. Art was so important in our family, and I'm so fortunate that I grew up, you know, knowing the importance of art and loving it. And so I think it's definitely important that, we are aware to not only, it's always so important to support your local artists and creators, but it's even, it's also important to support, I feel like, artists and creators within the disability community, dwarfism community, and everything like that. So we definitely want to share all our information that we can about that.
Absolutely.
So I'll make sure to include your information about that when we share this. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I put, for anyone who's
yeah,
live, I just put it in the chat to our email, Facebook, and Insta social media channels.
great. And I will make sure to link all of those as well when we share this. But other than that, this has been, now we really are like at the hour. So this has really been a great conversation, Cuquis. Thank you again so much for joining us for this conversation.
Yeah.
Again, want to have you back for more, and we will keep everyone, posted on Cuquis. Best, definitely congratulations on, getting your I forgot if you said license or certification that's hopefully coming within the next few weeks.
Yeah, hopefully, yes. So
Congratulations on that. Hopefully
thank you.
end of next week, or
Yes,
whatever.
hopefully.
But yeah, thanks again so much for having this conversation with us, and best of luck. And
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a great opportunity, and yeah, I hope to be back too. So yeah, thank you
definitely,
for, yeah, this has been a lot of fun for me. Thank you so much.
thank you. Well, other than that, I will bid you a goodbye.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thanks.